History of the Kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth. We're starting at Book 9, Chapter 1. Arthur succeeds Uther, his father, in the kingdom of Britain and besieges Colburn. Uther Pendragon, being dead, the nobility from several provinces assembled together at Silchester and proposed to Dubritius, Archbishop of Legions, that he should consecrate Arthur, Uther's son, to be their king, for they were now in great straits, because, upon hearing of the king's death, the Saxons had invited over their countrymen from Germany under the command of Colburn, were attempting to exterminate the whole British race. They had also entirely subdued all that part of the island which extended from the Humber to the sea of Caithness. Dubritius, therefore, grieving for the calamities of his country, in conjunction with other bishops, set the crown upon Arthur's head. Arthur was then 15 years old, but a youth of such unparalleled courage and generosity, joined with that sweetness of temper and innate goodness, has gained him universal love. When his coronation was over, he, according to usual custom, showed his bounty and munificence to the people, and such a number of soldiers flocked to him upon it, that his treasury was not able to answer the vast expense. But such a spirit of generosity, joined with valor, can never long want means of supporting itself. Arthur, therefore, the better to keep up his munificence, resolved to make use of his courage, and to fall upon the Saxons, that he might enrich his followers with their wealth. To this, he was also moved by the justice of the cause, since the entire monarchy of Britain belonged to him by hereditary right. Thereupon, assembling the youth under his command, he marched to York, of which, when Colburn had intelligence, he met him with a great army composed of Saxons, Scots, and Picts by the river Douglas, where a battle happened, with the loss of the greater part of both armies. Notwithstanding, the victory fell to Arthur, who pursued Colburn to York, and there besieged him. Baldulf, upon the news of his brother's flight, went toward the siege with a body of 6,000 men to his relief. For at the time of the battle, he was upon the seacoast, waiting the arrival of Duke Cheldric, with succor from Germany. And, being now no more than 10 miles distant from the city, his purpose was to make a speedy march in the night time, and fall upon the enemy by the way of surprise. But Arthur, having intelligence of his design, sent a detachment of 600 horse and 3,000 foot, under the command of Cador, Duke of Cornwall, to meet him that same night. Cador then, falling into the same road along which the enemy was passing, made a sudden assault upon them, and entirely defeated the Saxons, and put them to flight. Baldulf was excessively grieved at this disappointment in the relief which he intended for his brother, and began to think of some other stratagem to gain access to him, in which, if he could succeed, he thought they might concert measure together for their safety. And since he had no other way for it, he shaved his head and beard, and put on a habit of a jester with a harp, and in this disguise walked up and down the camp, playing upon his instrument as if he had been a harper. He thus passed unsuspected, and by a little and little went up to the wall, where he was at last discovered by the besieged, who, thereupon drew him up with cords and conducted him to his brother. At this unexpected, though much desired meeting, they spent some time in joyful embrace of each other, and then began to consider various stratagems for their delivery. At last, just as they were considering their case desperate, the ambassadors returned from Germany, and brought with them to Albania a fleet of 600 sail, laden with brave soldiers, under the command of Cheldric. Upon this news, Arthur was dissuaded by his council from continuing the siege any longer, for fear of hazarding a battle with so powerful and numerous an army. Chapter 2. Hoyle sends 15,000 men to Arthur's assistance. Arthur complied with their advice and made his retreat to London, where he called an assembly of his clergy and nobility of the kingdom to ask their advice of what course to take against the formidable powers of the pagans. After some deliberation, it was agreed that ambassadors should be dispatched to Amorica, to King Hoyle, to represent him the calamitous state of Britain. Hoyle was the son of Arthur's sister by Dubritius, king of the Amorican Britons, so that upon advice of the disturbances his uncle was threatened with, he ordered his fleet to be got ready, and having assembled 15,000 men, he arrived with the first fair wind at Hamo's port, and was received with all suitable honor by Arthur, and most affectionately embraced by him. Chapter 3. Arthur makes the Saxons his tributaries. After a few days, they went to relieve the city of Carluquot that was besieged by the pagans, which, being situated upon a mountain between two rivers in the province of Lindesia, is called by another name Lindunculin. As soon as they arrived there with their forces, they fought with the Saxons and made a grievous slaughter of them to the number of 6,000. Part of whom were drowned in the river, part fell by the hands of the Britons. The rest, in great consternation, quitted the siege and fled, but were closely pursued by Arthur till they came to the wood of Celadon, where they endeavored to form themselves into a body again and make a stand. And here they again joined battle with the Britons, and made a brave defense, whilst the trees that were in the place secured them against the enemy's arrows. Arthur, seeing this, commanded the trees that were in that part of the wood to be cut down, and the trunks to be placed quite around them, so as to hinder their getting out, resolving to keep them penned up here till he could reduce them by famine. He then commanded his troops to besiege the wood, and continued 3 days in that place. The Saxons, having now no provisions to sustain them, and being just ready to starve with hunger, begged for their leave to go out, in consideration whereof they offered to leave all their gold and silver behind them, and return back to Germany with nothing but empty ships. They promised also that they would pay him tribute from Germany and leave hostages with them. Arthur, after consultation about it, granted their petition, allowing them only to depart and retaining all their treasure, as also hostages for payment of their tribute. But, as they were under sail on their way returning home, they repented of their bargain, and tacked about again toward Britain, and went on shore to Totnes. No sooner were they landed than they made an utter devastation of the country as far as the Severn Sea, and put all the peasants to the sword. From thence they pursued their furious march to the town of Bath, and laid siege to it. When the king had intelligence of it, He was beyond measure surprised at their proceedings, and immediately gave orders for the execution of the hostages, and desisting from any attempt which he had entered upon to reduce the Scots and Picts. He marched with the utmost expedition to raise the siege, but labored under very great difficulties, because he had left his nephew Hoyle sick at Alclud. At length, having entered the province of Somerset, and beheld how the siege was carried on, he addressed himself to his followers in these words: Since these impious and detestable Saxons have disdained to keep faith with me, I, to keep faith with God, will endeavor to revenge the blood of my countrymen this day upon them. To arms, soldiers, to arms, and courageously fall upon the perfidious wretches, over whom we shall, with Christ assisting us, undoubtedly obtain victory. Chapter 4. Dubritius' speech against the treacherous Saxons. Arthur, with his own hand, kills 470 Saxons in one battle. Colgrin and Baldulf are killed in the same. When he had done speaking, St. Dubritius, Archbishop of Legions, going to the top of the hill, cried out with a loud voice, You that have the honor of professing the Christian faith, keep fixed in your minds the love which you owe your country and fellow subjects, whose suffering by treachery of the pagans will be everlasting reproach to you, if you do not courageously defend them. It is your country which you fight for, and for which you should, when required, voluntarily suffer death. For that itself is victory and the cure of the soul. For he that dies for his brethren offers himself a living sacrifice to God, and has Christ for his example, who condescended to lay down his life for his brethren. If therefore any of you shall be killed in this war, that death itself, which is suffered in so glorious a cause, shall be to him for penance and absolution of all his sins. At these words, all of them, encouraged with the benediction of the holy prelate, instantly armed themselves and prepared to obey his orders. Also, Arthur himself, having put on a coat of mail suitable to the grandeur of so powerful a king, placed a golden helmet upon his head, on which was engraved the figure of the dragon, and on his shoulders his shield, called Pridwin, upon which the picture of the Blessed Mary, Mother of God, was painted, in order to put him frequently in mind of her. Then, girding on his caliburn, which was the excellent sword made in the Isle of Avalon, he graced his right hand with his lance named Ron, which was hard, broad, and fit for slaughter. After this, having placed his men in order, he boldly attacked the Saxons, who were drawn out in the shape of a wedge, as was their manner. Now, notwithstanding, the Britons fought with great eagerness, made a noble defense all that day, but at length, towards sunsetting, climbed up the next mountain, which served them for a camp. For they desired no larger extent of ground, since they confided very much in their numbers. The next morning, Arthur with his army went up the mountain, but lost many of his men in the ascent, by the advantage which the Saxons had in their situation on top, from whence they could pour down upon him with much greater speed than he was able to advance against them. Notwithstanding, after a very hard struggle, the Britons gained the summit of the hill, and quickly came to a close engagement with the enemy, who again gave them a warm reception, and made a vigorous defense. In this manner was a great part of that day also spent, whereupon Arthur, provoked to see the little advantage he had yet gained, and that victory still continued in suspense, drew out his caliburn, and calling upon the name of the Blessed Virgin, rushed forward with great fury into the thickest of the army's ranks, of whom, such was the merit of his prayers, not one escaped alive that felt the fury of his sword. Neither did he give over the fury of his assault until he had, with his caliburn alone, killed 470 men. The Britons, seeing this, followed their leader in great multitudes, and made slaughter on all sides, so that Colgrin and Balduth his brother, and many thousands more, fell before them. But Cheldric, in his imminent danger of his men, betook himself to flight. That is where we will end with the first 4 chapters of Book 9. Be sure to continue watching as we go through this. The history of the Kings of Britain doesn't have fully to do with Arthur, so I'm just going to be reading the books that pertain specifically to Arthur, which would be books 9, 10, and part of 11, I believe. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe to continue getting updates on these stories. I look forward to continuing reading them.